Let begins quietly. Nobody gets it at first. You're 7 years old with your face smashed up against the face of a parent who is coming apart. Perhaps it's addiction. Perhaps it's rage. Perhaps it's simply the empty silence of one so broken that they can't show up. And in the absence of words, something primal engages your small brain. If I don't hold it all together, nobody will. This is how a child vanishes. Not from sight, but from mind. They smile more, they weep less. They learn to read the room first before speaking. They become the emotional thermostat of the family. They become mini adults long before their brain is prepared. And society rewards them for it. You're so mature, you're so responsible, you're so resilient, but nobody ever pauses to wonder, at what cost? This is the invisible sorrow of the child who grew up too soon. And today we're looking inside the psyche of that child because the impact does not fade with time. It forms you. It carries over into relationships, jobs, your self-worth. And if you don't know what occurred, you'll spend your entire adult life recycling the survival habits that kept you alive when you were a child, but are now incrementally killing you. Let's begin with what actually is going on developmentally. When kids are made to emotionally support adults rather than the reverse, psychologists refer to this as parentification. It's when the child is the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the therapist, the protector. Not only is that unhealthy, that rewires the brain. Because when a child is repeatedly placed in charge of emotion regulation, either their own or others, it sets up something referred to as hypervigilance. You're always scanning for danger. You walk on eggshells. You learn that love is a transaction. You give peace and maybe they'll give you safety. You learn that your needs are dangerous and theirs are urgent. So you disappear not physically but emotionally. And in your place grows a version of you that performs well. You become the good child, the quiet achiever, the therapist friend, the one who never asks for anything. And you wear that persona so convincingly that even you end up forgetting it's a facade. But inside, something is hurt. Something aches because the inner child you silenced didn't die. They're still in there shouting silently, "Why didn't anyone protect me?" With age, the symptoms get more complicated. You may become hyper-independent. You push others away, deny help, or never feel safe enough to let love in. You may numb out during joyful times because joy seems foreign, undeserved, even perilous. You may not be able to sleep because productivity is the only way you know how to feel valuable. And most tragically, you may not even know you are still operating in survival mode. Because when dysfunction is normalized early on, your nervous system takes chaos as normal. Stillness is wrong, peace is suspicious, love is a debt you'll owe. This is the psychology of a child who had to grow up too quickly. It's not only sadness. It's a complicated trauma that reconditions the way you perceive the world and, more importantly, yourself. Now you can ask, why would any kid take on that role willingly? Because kids will do anything for attachment, even sell themselves out. It's never a conscious choice. It's biological. When there is no safety, the kid gives up authenticity for belonging. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. That's instinct. But what a tragedy is this? What rescued you then holds you captive now. So many of us are functioning as high-functioning adults with profoundly neglected inner children calling the shots. We overachieve in order to earn love. We stay quiet to prevent abandonment. We take care of all the right people but secretly hope someone will simply ask if we're doing all right. And that fantasy that someone will pay attention when you're not as strong as you're acting. That perhaps finally you'll get to break down and be held. That is the unmet need, not of your adult self, but of the child who never had a chance to be a child. The first thing to recovery isn't repairing, it's acknowledging. Because until you acknowledge what occurred, you'll continue gaslighting yourself with statements like, "It wasn't so bad, other folks had it worse, I turned out okay." But okay is a facade too, and you know that inside. What does that child become when they reach adulthood? They become grown people who can never feel safe even in peaceful rooms. They become lovers who can't accept softness. They become givers who can't receive. They become the type of people who apologize for tears, flinch at compliments, and mistake exhaustion with success. This is the price of growing up too quickly. Because if your childhood prepared you to be tough at the expense of being vulnerable, to be quiet rather than truthful, to mend others without tending to your own cracks, then what is the adulthood you inherit? You inherit a world where you're always holding your breath, waiting for permission to finally shatter. But here's the truth. No one is coming to save the kid you buried. You have to go back and take their hand. You have to tell them what no one else ever told them. You didn't do anything wrong. You were a kid. You get to rest now. This is the start of shadow work. Not avoiding, not doing, not circumventing the pain with false positivity, but facing toward the abandoned parts of you and declaring, I see you now. I hear you now, and I'm not leaving. That is the repairing work. And it's hard because it requests you to bear the grief you never took time to experience. It requests you to stay with the anger, the sadness, the unmet needs, to cry for the birthdays when no one came, to grieve the innocence that you lost defending people who were supposed to defend you. But that mourning, it isn't weakness. It's evidence that you're in recovery, because what had hardened is now falling. Now let's discuss how this survival pattern appears in adulthood, subtly, tragically, and invisibly. You may become a therapist in all your friendships but never let anyone really know you. You may be admired for your autonomy when really you're afraid of being a burden. You may be in relationships where you overfunction, always fixing, managing, over-explaining, and wondering why you resent. You may have trouble with boundaries because saying no continues to feel like betrayal. These are not personality disorders. They are coping mechanisms, conditioned, learned, and the best part, unlearnable. But only after you refrain from worshiping your strength and begin to respect your wounds. One of the strongest things you can do is to ask your inner child, what did I need back then and never received? You might get answers such as, I needed someone to say to me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask me how I was doing. I needed to play, rest, and laugh without fear. And gradually, very gradually, you start to give those things to yourself, not to repair your past, but to end reliving it. This is how you end looking for parents in your lovers. This is how you end confusing fear with intuition. This is how you end fleeing from the child you were and the self you are becoming. Carl Jung once stated, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But shadow work requires we confront it. All of it. The ignored, the shameful, the fearful, the enraged. Because healing is not about becoming new. It's about reclaiming who you used to be before the world instructed you on who to be. So, if you're a person who became too grown up too quickly, let this be known. Your maturity was never the issue. The issue is that you had no option. But you do have an option now. You can opt for softness. You can opt to rest. You can opt to cease managing everybody else's feelings and begin respecting your own. And no, not overnight. There will be days when you'll want to be a child again. Good, that's the idea. Let that child come home, let them cry, let them play, let them finally see. Because you're not broken, you're getting whole. And perhaps for the first time ever, you're actually growing up the correct way. Not through pressure, not through fear, but by truth. You never got to be a child, but you do have a future. And this time, you get to author it.